Now let's talk about who we're up against. You want to do that? I don't care if you do. Here it comes. Who are we up against? We're up against Satan and his followers. In Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14, some different places, it talks about how Satan was an angel. He was an angel who was filled with pride. How did that happen? We're not really sure. There's different things. I don't have time to preach it. But he, from the Bible evidence, fell from heaven. When he fell from heaven, he took a third of the angels with him. And so now this contingency of spiritual beings is against us. He shows up in the garden, and he's the one who pulls Adam and Eve off sides and started this whole mess that we're in the first place. So he's alive, active, and he's still at his, he's still up to his tricks. We're in the middle of this war. But let's talk about him. Satan and his followers, just so you know, are limited beings. Write that down in your notes. They are limited beings. They are angelic, and so they perhaps have more at their disposal in their arsenal than you and I do. But they are, by their nature, created. God made them, and so they are limited beings. Write these words down: omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. Sound it out. I'm not going to spell them. Omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. If you haven't heard these words before, they're words that describe the nature of God. He's omniscient. He knows all things. He's omnipotent. He can do all things. And he's omnipresent. He is everywhere. Satan and his followers are none of these things. Satan and his followers are not omniscient. Satan cannot read your mind. Some of you might be thinking that he can, but he is unable to do that. He is limited in the scope of what he can do. Now, he's a great student of us, and he knows our tendencies, and he knows where he can take advantage of us, and he does. Agreed? So just like you and I, if we were on a football team, would study film of the other football team so that we could know how to exploit their weaknesses, or just like you and I have friends who are gullible. Anybody got a gullible friend that you can just have hours of enjoyment with, right? And you'll go to great, painstaking measures to, set them up. You know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, if you've ever done this, if you ever done, hey, what's that on your shirt? And your friend goes, huh? And you go, huh? Then you know what I'm talking about, right? Satan knows where we're gullible. Satan knows our weaknesses. He's studied us. He can't read our minds, but he knows our behaviors, and he's going to exploit what he sees in them. But he's not omniscient. He's not omnipotent. Satan does not have the powers that God has. In fact, what Scripture teaches us is that Satan is limited by what God allows. I don't have time to preach that message either. Why would God ever allow Satan to do anything? Well, we live in a time and a space where Satan is the prince of this world, but we serve the King of Kings. Someone say amen. He's all-powerful. Satan in it isn't. In fact, when you read the book of Job, remember Job was there, and God and Satan have this conversation in chapter 1. And God says, there's my boy Job, isn't he awesome? And Satan says, man, if you let me just, and that was the phrase, if you let me. If you gave me a shot at him, he'd curse your name. And the rest of Job unfolds because God says, all right, do your worst. And from time to time, he'll, for his own perfect reasons and in his perfect will, allow stuff to happen to us. And Satan can have more of an influence over us than other times. But listen, he's not omnipotent. He doesn't do things just as he wishes. He is subject to God. So many times, we think this God-Satan thing is like Star Wars. There's two forces out there, and they have equal potential. And so it's God versus Satan on this even level playing field. It's not a level playing field at all. It's not God versus Satan. It's God kicks butt on Satan. That's how this works. Okay? So he's not omnipotent, and he's not omnipresent. Okay, sometimes you've heard preaching that, Satan is, knocking at my door. The devil made me do it. Remember Flip Wilson, all that stuff? Satan is confined to one space, one area. And just so we know, not to belittle us or anything, but he's probably not bothering with you and me. Okay, I think Satan personally is trying to mess up the leaders of the world, and he's got special assignment that way. Now, he does have demons, and those demons, as the Bible teaches us, have influence and assignments. If you ever want to read a great book on this whole subject, Screwtape Letters by a guy named C.S. Lewis is definitive on this stuff. And it's written from the perspective of demons talking about how they can draw Christians away from God. It's just a fascinating read. But those demons are assigned to you and I, and those are the ones who mess you up. Satan's not everywhere at once because he's limited in his power. Satan, if you want to know what he's existing for, it's one simple thing. He and his followers live for our destruction. Write that down. It says in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, be self-controlled and alert. Why? Because your enemy, the devil, he prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Satan is hungry, and you are on the menu. He wants you, he wants you to be destroyed. And here's the deal. Write these two words down. Use and or abuse. This is all that Satan's built around. It's always about. All he wants to do is either use you and abuse you, or if he can't use you for his work and his purposes, he'll just abuse you. Here's what I mean. The greatest weapon that Satan wields in this war against God are Christians who don't care about God, or Christians who sin like God doesn't exist. Satan loves you guys. Satan loves me when I'm that way, because he gets to use me, a follower of Jesus, in his efforts to thwart Jesus. We're his greatest weapon. If he can get a church divided against itself, a church focused on something other than the gospel of Jesus Christ, then that's the greatest thing that he can have in his efforts to undermine God. Now, if a church like Bay Life says, Satan, we're not going to do that. We're going to live for the truth. We're going to honor Jesus Christ. Around here, it's him first, not me, and definitely not you, Satan. And that's the way it is here, if you weren't aware of that. That's how we roll. It's all about our God and his Son, Jesus Christ, and his gospel moving forward. Now, when that happens, and Satan can't use us as a church, he can't divide us against each other, when he can't employ us as a weapon, well, then he just says, well, I'm just going to try to destroy him. I'm just going to try to wipe him out. In this battle, Satan is aiming at the generals. He wants to take the churches, he wants to take the leaders, he wants to take the life group, he wants to take any of us who are serious about a relationship with Jesus Christ and pick us off one by one, because if he can get us moving away from God, us discouraged in our faith in God, then he can take everybody who's looking to us, following us, holding us up as a standard, and he can sway them away from God as well. Do you see the importance of that? If he can't use us, he loves dead Christians. He loves them. Loves to use them. But if you're not dead, he's just going to try to destroy you because of what you will mean to the kingdom moving forward in that respect. Now, he's here to destroy us. Isn't that the great news? No, that's not the great news. You want to hear the great news? Write this down. Satan and his followers are defeated. It is finished. When Jesus uttered those words on the cross, this battle was decided. It's over. It's done. Now, it still rages today. I'm not denying that you and I still sin. We wrestle with stuff. We still, suffer from depression and discouragement. Those satanic issues are still at foot. But in the end, you flip through in this Bible to the end in Revelation chapter 20, and you're going to see that Satan is cast forever into the lake of fire, no longer to live and affect the children of God. It is finished. Jesus was sent for this purpose. Look what it says in 1 John chapter 3. It says, he who does what is sinful is of the devil. Stop. Did you see that? Does everybody connect your sin with this truth? When you sin, you switch jerseys. You go from honoring God and loving him and choosing him to stepping across the field and honoring Satan. Just so we're clear, if that ratchets the whole sin thing up for you and makes you feel a little bit less easy about sinning, good. When you sin, you switch teams. He who does what is sinful is of the devil, because the devil's been sinning from the beginning. But listen to this. This is the great news. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy what? The devil's work. The reason the Son of God came to this earth was so that he could right what has been wronged by the devil for all time. He has won. It's done. In fact, it predicts it in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, when God's handing out all the punishments for Adam and Eve and Satan. He refers in that verse to Satan having to deal with the offspring of the woman. It seems confusing until you understand that the offspring of the woman refers to Jesus Christ, born of a Virgin Mary. born to our race. That goes all the way back to the 3rd chapter of the Bible. And it points to the fact that someone will come from the human race who will crush the head of the serpent. Now, the serpent will strike at his foot, but ultimately, and that's what's happening, we're living in the day and age when we, as Christ followers, have occasional nasty little ant bites that come from our adversary, Satan, that bother us. But we are pressed but not crushed, persecuted but not abandoned. This stuff hits us, but it doesn't kill us. But here's the deal. In that verse, Genesis 3:15, it says, the woman's offspring will crush the head of the serpent. Jesus wins. Jesus wins. So be encouraged. As we go through this whole thing and I talk about how to handle Satan and his ploys, know that in the end, we win.